Hello again, and welcome to the first unboxing video here on Overwhelming Odds. We're going to start with the game mats from GAMEMAT.EU. They were gracious enough to send two mats. I know one of them is the Arctic Battlefield. The other is just going to have to be a surprise. Let's go ahead and open this up and see which one of these mats we're going to be working with, and we'll take a good hard look at it. It was packaged very well, so I'm very pleased. There wasn't any damage. So let's open this up and see how it was packaged on the inside. I'm going to attempt to not shed any blood for the blood god today. Already you can see it comes in a very nice casing. I love this. I have this for a couple of my other battle mats, and it's really invaluable just for carrying and storage purposes. You want to keep the dust and everything off of it. Very sturdy. Keeps everything together. Once again, I roll these underneath the bed. It makes it very, very easy to store, especially because you can slide in long ways, especially when you have multiple mats. So let's go ahead and get this unrolled out and see what it looks like. Perfect. It's the Arctic mat. As you can see, it's a very good material. I like that it has these little nubs on the bottom of the mat. That's nice because instead of it just being a smooth surface on the bottom, it keeps it from shifting because they're almost like little feet, tendrils that just kind of grip onto your surface, so you can see it does not move easily. I like that. Some of my other mats are more of a mouse pad, smooth backing, and I don't like it because they tend to shift and everything. And with this, you can see it has quite a bit of tension when you try to pull it, which I like. Not too thick, not too thin, which is nice when you're rolling your dice on it. You know, I prefer them to be a little bit thinner like this, because if they're too thick, when you go to roll your dice, they don't really have that bounce and tumble that you're looking for to get that random variation. So I think this is going to be very nice. I'll have to do some test rolls on it and see how I feel. But right now, I'm very pleased. Especially with the look and the layout. Now that I've seen it on the full size, I'm really liking the size of the road, some of these areas for facilities. Because one thing I really don't like is when you go to put terrain on your battle mat or set up your battlefield, and it's overhanging into areas that it doesn't make sense aesthetically. You know, you put a ruin or something like that, and part of it's jutting out into the road or something along that, because then it really limits your ability to do versatile things with your terrain that you currently have, or that's something you're trying to execute to have a strategic or tactical use. Like, I want the terrain oriented in a certain way because I need to block line of sight long ways, and you go to set it down, and it just doesn't work. I'm a big fan of this type. As you've seen with some of my urban mats, I like this style because it gives you a lot of flexibility. I like that there isn't a tremendous amount of detail in the snow that would take away or limit me from putting different terrain pieces because it would look out of place or jarring. I'm definitely liking the offset roads, because one thing I don't want in some of my battles is symmetry, because battlefields aren't symmetrical. I have yet to see a symmetrical battlefield in real life. I don't think I ever will. So when I'm looking at my battlefields and looking for game mats and stuff, I'm definitely looking for that asymmetric feel and look, because it gives your battlefields character. When you're setting up your terrain and everything like that, you want to adhere to how your battlefield and your battle mat looks. And by having an asymmetrical battlefield, it kind of forces you to take your terrain and do non-symmetrical things with it. So as you can see, it's asymmetrical left to right, but it's also asymmetrical on the short side, because you have these roads and you have these, you would basically consider designated areas for terrain with these two blocks. But then you have, you know, this smaller block, but you have this wide area here to be able to put your terrain out and utilize this whole area, as opposed to there you can't. And then same thing is with this road approaching this, you know, area that's free of snow and it's kind of industrial. You can do that whole, hey, here's a fortress, and you're fighting long ways on the battlefield as you approach maybe a garrison or whatnot. And I really like these design touches here, where they have these notches, both here and here, because that looks like something where you would put a gun emplacement on either side as you protect whatever's going to be behind here with a road approaching it. That makes sense to me. You see that with military facilities all the time. We have that perpendicular nature where a road is going to come up, and then you have garrison forces, security, your checkpoints, your gates, defensive fighting positions, entry control points, and this gives me tons of ideas of ways that you can exploit those kinds of aspects when setting up your battlefield. I have to say I'm incredibly impressed. I love the tonal variations, and you have, you know, pure white going to a dirtier white with a lot of bluish hues. You know, it's just not, you know, white speckles everywhere to represent snow drifts. It actually has frozen variations of color and also texture in a lot of these patterns, and I'm really pleased by that. Especially with some of these areas that are designated for terrain, by taking away some of the hard corners, it allows you a lot of versatility in how you set up your terrain, and it won't look jarring. I'm huge on when I set up my terrain, I want it to match and look realistic as far as would somebody actually put terrain there. And by having some of these sharp angular edges where you could put a 90-degree terrain piece, but it's also got a little bit of snow covering over it, it doesn't hinder you from doing what you want to do, but it's also going to look appropriate if you match those lines up with the edges of your terrain. So I like that you can go either way and it's not going to look awful. I also like this one because it has a very wide sidewalk, if you will. It's a real good width, where on some of my other urban battle mats, I mean, they're one base wide. With this being wider like this, it also gives you a lot more versatility in creating space between some of your terrain. I densely pack a lot of my terrain. I probably use triple what a lot of people use. And I like this because, you know, you're very rarely, if ever, going to put terrain in your road. So this whole area here and here is more than likely going to stay free. But what I like is by having the sidewalk here, you're almost kind of guaranteeing a degree of separation between your terrain pieces and the road, plus this buffer of the sidewalk on either side. So you're getting a wide path as far as line of sight and everything like that, because realistically, I don't see putting a lot of terrain there. Now, what's also nice about this is you can still create line of sight blocking with scatter terrain. Like the galvanic servo hauler would be a perfect example of this. That's stuff you would expect to see on these roads or maybe on these sidewalks. So you can still have scatter terrain on your sidewalks and your roads and everything to block line of sight, but for the most part it'll be open. But that's why scatter terrain is so important, because you're more than likely not going to put a building, a ruin, a bunker, or something like that, you know, in this type of area. But your scatter terrain is perfect for that. And it'll look so nice. And not only that, but you kind of control the flow of the battle as the armies are moving either left or right, or top to bottom, as you see it here on the short side. You have those avenues of approach, you have those fire lanes, and I'm really enjoying and liking what I'm seeing, because there's just so much that you can do with this. A nice touch too is this central area here, where you have kind of a buildup of ice and frost and snow that kind of almost obscures the road and everything like that, because you could easily put a terrain piece there and justify it by saying that this is an abandoned facility, and this road is no longer used because it's been snowed over. It could be perfect for an objective, and it's centrally located, which I like too, because a lot of times you're always going to wind up with an objective somewhere in the center of the battlefield. You want central battlefield position and control. So I like that this is going to basically provide a nice background for your models as well, just from an artistic and a visual sense. I like the hazard striping here. I'm a big fan of those tiny little details like that. And what I like about this is it could double as a lift for an underground facility. I have, matter of fact, right over here, a small lift that I've made, and these little touches kind of give you that illusion of depth that you're never going to get on a two-dimensional battlefield, but to the mind and the eye, it looks as if there's a lift going somewhere. And I really like that this could either be a dedicated area for a building, a ruin, or whatnot, but it also could double as a lift or a platform to below ground subterranean facilities. So I'm definitely digging that. Just the overall detail now that they're able to print on these mats is just phenomenal. I mean, you have the steel plating with the riveting here. You have your vents, which I really like. If you're a Gene Steeler Cult fan, this mat's for you. Just between the manholes, the underground ventilation systems that are here. I mean, you have more manholes here. So this could all be stuff that your army utilizes. It's very thematic. I also like the ripples and the false sense of 3 dimensions with the snow drifts. You see it repeated in multiple locations here. They did an excellent job with the coloring to be able to give you at least a pseudo amount of depth, where you see tire tracks or the ripples in the snow drift, the semi-transparency of some of the ice. But I spent 2.5 years in South Dakota at Ellsworth Air Force Base, so I know what snow drifts look like. We used to have snow drifts that went over the top of our 2-story house, and you could literally sled ride from the top of the peak of the roof all the way down to the end of a 3-car long driveway. It was insane. Between the wind and the tremendous amount of snow that they would get, I've never seen anything like it. So this has real memories for me. Horrible memories. My wife absolutely hated it. It was cold, freezing, blizzards in May. I was actually trapped underground for 2 days when I went to Airman Leadership School back in 2009, because they got a freak blizzard in May-June timeframe. And the Airman Leadership School was actually in an underground alert facility for old bombers. And because everything was ramped down and literally 1 story underground, we got somewhere in the vicinity of 4 or 5 feet of snow just within a matter of a day or two. And it took them 2 days to get to us. We weren't in any danger or anything. We had plenty of food and water and everything like that. But it was crazy. It was kind of like The Shining. It was like, are we really snowed in? And so I've been wanting to make an Arctic battlefield for so long, just because there's just so many memories and stuff like that that are tied to Arctic conditions and winter conditions and such. So I'm really, really enjoying this, and I'm going to be able to do so much with it. Snow drifts are actually one of the things I want to bring as a piece of terrain, where you just have rolling dunes, if you will, of snow that are tall enough to easily block line of sight. Because I can tell you, I've seen it, it exists. It typically happens anytime the wind comes over any kind of structure like a guardrail, fencing, whatever. It acts as a brake, and it will literally just deposit the snow literally on the other side, whether it be your house, the front of your house could be clear, and on the back half you have 30 feet of snow. It's insane. So I definitely want to capture that kind of aesthetic coming into building out some of the terrain. And it's really easy to do as long as you have a basic, mold, a shape, if you will. And then, you can use all kinds of things, whether it's like the lizard sand that I have used on some of my bases, to baking soda is fantastic for replicating snow effects, especially if you use super glue, because then it'll give you, some of it will basically melt and create an icy sheen, while some of it will remain powder and just can't adhere to the surface. Yeah, baking soda is phenomenal for snow. So I'm really excited to be able to do that kind of real life mimicry, if you will, on this type of battlefield, because they've already got it laid out for that. You already have that kind of snowdrift, windy vibe going, because that's how you get all of this spotting, is with snowdrifts and stuff, and the ripple effects and everything like that just helps sell that vibe, which I'm really excited about, because it's those little touches that allow you to blend terrain into a previous battlefield map, but it also it makes it cohesive, because when you start bringing in that terrain, you already have design elements within the battle mat itself, so it's super believable. You see a big mountain of snow, you don't go, well, that doesn't make sense. Look how clear and pristine the bat mat is. You don't have that. You have so much of this drift that's formed everywhere that it would be very easy for somebody to go, oh, that makes sense. There should be a huge pile of snow here, there, and wherever, because it's just, look at the battle mat. So I am extremely pleased with this battle mat. It has so much form and function. I can already envision so many different scenarios that can play out on this. Whether you're assaulting a military garrison or facility, and this is the main front of the facility, and you're having to fight your way towards the main facility and the entrance, and kind of crash through the gates, or just to you're approaching and you're coming from wherever this road leads to, which is nice because you don't know, and you have a bunch of polar Arctic facilities here, and this is just a small makeshift outpost, if you will. It's exciting. There's just so much you can do with mats when they're laid out appropriately, and they enhance what you can do rather than restrict. Because I've seen some battle mats that really restrict what you can do, because they either have odd geometric shapes, or they're laid out weird, or just the patterns or the paths or the way they put the grass or water or whatever limits you, because you're just not going to put terrain on mats in a certain way, because it's going to look really jarring. So I really am impressed with the way that this is designed and laid out, because I don't really see anything on my initial look that prevents me from doing what I would normally do, or what I love to do with my terrain. I'm not going to be putting full-blown terrain on the road, that's a given, but the sidewalks give a lot of versatility that I don't have on my other mats, and I'm going to have to look at some of the dimensions, and I'll have to do another video on that, because I like knowing what I'm working with. And a lot of the mats that I've seen have very distinct distances, which is nice when you're doing deployment zones, because once you know what your point of reference is, you're not always having to line out tokens or some sort of marker to know where you deploy. And I'll be interested to see, because I have a suspicion that one of these lines more than likely is dead center, going this direction, and I know what dead center is going this direction, because I imagine this road splits it right down the middle, which is nice, because when you're just trying to orient your bearings and lay out you don't want to have to constantly be getting out a tape measure. If there are visual cues and references that you can use, then that just makes it that much easier when setting up deployment zones and stuff like that, especially with some of the diagonals. If you have good points of reference, like middle of the road, it just makes it super simple to be able to lay those out. I hope you've enjoyed the commentary. I hope you have a newfound appreciation for what GAMEMAT.EU is putting out. This is fantastic quality. And it's not just print quality I'm talking about. I'm talking about layout, design, the aesthetic, the design. Everything that they have done is well thought out and planned. And I can see that because when I build my own battlefields, I put a tremendous amount of effort into making sure they look cinematic and also they're immersive. And this map does so much of that on its own. So I can only imagine what's going to happen once I start getting some terrain on here, because I think it's going to really, really look nice. And also, I've always wanted to have a battlefield that was so white because it provides such a stark contrast to your models. They're really going to pop out. You're really going to see a lot of the details that's going to get lost on some of the more busier urban mats, or you know, I have a Rocky Canyon type map, and they tend to blend because there's so much tonal diversity in the colors. You know, lots of grays, blacks, browns, and your models kind of fade into the background. With something like this, they're just going to stand right out. You're gonna see them in all their glory, and that's something I'm definitely going to be appreciative of. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you've enjoyed this content. There's more coming. I have the other battle mat to do, as well as 2 full sets of terrain, another set of MDF terrain from Death Ray Designs that I'm super excited about, as well as a couple other surprises and odds and ends that the sponsors have been so gracious to send. I can't wait to unveil it and show you guys. And I'm going to be making some videos with this battle map where I'm going to be laying out all of the terrain that I've created up to this point, so you can see the scope and scale of the efforts that I've been throwing towards this. And I'm very excited to finally be able to see it, because you can visualize it in your head, but it's not real until you see it. So I'm very excited to throw some of these terrain pieces on here and see how they look and how they're going to perform their roles and functions. Once again, thank you so much, and I hope you've enjoyed the video.